You are listening to the Keep the Weight Off podcast with Dr. Angela
and Marshall,
episode number 128.
Welcome to the Keep the Weight Off podcast, where we bust all the dieting myths and discover not just how to lose weight, but more importantly, how to keep it off. We go way beyond the food, and we use science and psychology to give you strategies that work. And now your host, Dr. Angela Zechmann.
All right. Hey, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast this week. How are you doing, Marshall?
I'm doing really, really good. I had a fantastic weekend. I've been spending a lot of time with family and friends the last few weeks, and it feels really good to reunite. So I have been really just reconnecting with people I haven't seen in a long time, and that has been just a fantastic experience. So I'm doing really well.
Yay.
Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's been really hot, and so I love hot.
Oh, yeah. And no, it has. It's been really hot.
We don't get a lot of hot around here in the Pacific Northwest, and most of my friends are like, they just don't like this heat. And I'm thinking, I love it.
I love it too.
I grew up in Kansas, so I'm used to hot summers, and I was born in Texas, and so it's like, I love the heat. So I always have these arguments with my friends like, oh, I love it so much. And they're like,
Me too.
My gosh, how do you stand it?
Right. So, being from California, I'm used to the hot Northern California, very hot summers too. So
yeah.
So I'm used to it. I like it.
So all of those of you who are in other parts of the country who are suffering through horrible, horrible hot, I feel for you, because 115 is not fun. And 110 is not fun.
Yeah.
We're just in the high 80s here. So that's high 80s, maybe low 90s. So, okay. Well, let's get to work here. This week, I wanted to talk about some of the crazy games that our minds play on us as we're moving along on our weight loss journey. And this topic was inspired by a conversation that I had with one of our patients this last week. And she was just getting started. So she started last month, and she came in for her 1-month follow-up. And she told me that she'd done really, really well for the first couple of weeks. And then she took a little weekend trip, some sort of small vacation. And when she came back, she found herself rebelling against everything. So her brain is saying, no, I'm not going to do this meal planning. This is stupid. And no, I'm not going to eat this food. Everything was saying, no, 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 no. And she said she almost didn't come in for her follow-up appointment. She got really discouraged with herself. She was beating herself up. She felt like she wasn't going to show any progress, and she was really upset with herself. And, she couldn't figure out what was going on. Like, why was she just having this rebellious reaction to doing all the things that she knew that she really wanted to do, so that she could get healthy again? So I just want to point out from the outset, this is not unusual. Like, we see this a lot, right, Marshall?
Oh yeah, this is really common.
We see it a lot. So Marshall, you and I both had conversations with her because it's really important to figure out what's going on in our brains when we find ourselves resisting change like this. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. I do remember her. I'm so glad actually we were talking about this, because especially in weight maintenance for me, like trying to keep the weight off has been super, super difficult with all the mind chatter. It has been especially hard in that phase of, I guess, weight loss is the maintenance part. So I'm really glad that you decided to talk about this today. I'm excited.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the hidden obstacles that lurk within us, keeping us from doing what we need to do to lose weight and keep it off. It's fascinating how our own minds play all kinds of tricks on us, isn't it, Marshall?
This is so true. Like sometimes I feel like it's just a constant battle in my mind, just trying to figure things out.
Okay. So let's talk about some of the common patterns that occur that cause us to sabotage ourselves. The first is what I would call a hidden rebellion. This is so common. It's like our inner toddler or our inner rebellious teenager comes out fighting and says, no, I'm not going to follow these stupid rules. I'm going to eat what I want and you can't make me change. There's an unconscious and hidden motivation to maintain self-autonomy, which essentially means self-guidance. And the idea of doing anything any different, even if it's to your benefit, creates instant feelings of rebelliousness. So sometimes we see this in people who've had childhoods where there was a really strict authoritarian figure, or maybe you lived in constant fear of punishment, or, something along those lines where you had a lot of strict rules to follow. And, our own minds really want us to be self-directed. And so if you had like this authoritarian figure in your life, maybe there was even some sort of abuse going on, you're much more likely to have this pattern going on. You're naturally just going to rebel against anything that you perceive as an authority figure because you were not safe following the rules growing up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, wow, we're getting kind of deep here all of a sudden.
Yeah, we can be.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. So, because I was just thinking back on when I did the 5-day sugar and flour detox in the very beginning, and by the third day, it just took me 3 days, and I was resentful. I was like, I think I talked to you about that. I think we even had that on video that one day when I was just like, I don't know why I did this. Why did I sign up for this? This is stupid. I can't do it. And I was just, my mind just flipped into, this total rebellion. And like I said, it only took me 3 days. And I mean, I did grow up with really strict parents. I think it was just the time period though that I grew up in. I think everybody, in the 80s, 80s kids, we all just kind of grew up with, that strictness. But this is getting deep.
Yeah. Well, part of what was happening for you on day 3 of sugar detox is just your brain was in withdrawal too,
Oh,
and
yeah.
So
for
your
sure.
brain's going to tell you anything it can to get you to eat crap. So,
oh, yeah. Yeah.
So to get that dopamine hit again. So that was a piece of it. But then all of this other stuff from past psychology comes in on top of that. So yeah, it's a tough thing to deal with. And, it's funny because people tell me all the time, they're like, Dr. Angela, you're haunting me. Like, I hear your voice when I'm at a buffet. I hear your voice all the time. And they put me up as an authority figure. And then they'll rebel against me. And it's a really, really interesting phenomenon. So for our listeners, I want you to just ask yourself if you have a tendency to do this. Do you find yourself making a lot of rules in your own head about eating or exercise and then rebelling against them later? If so, see if you can figure out where this pattern may have come from. This is really, really interesting thing to do. Now, when I talked to this particular patient, she knew exactly what she was rebelling against. She said that she'd had a very powerful and directive mother whom she really still loves. I mean, her mother is still alive. She loves her dearly and she totally respects her. But at times she also felt judged and she naturally just rebelled against this. And then she had a tendency to project that onto situations and other people in authority. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I have something kind of funny to tell you. I'm not sure because you don't really hear this side of things. But so many times when patients come in and, they've been really hard on themselves, they ask me like, am I going to get yelled at? Or is Dr. Angela going to get mad at me? Or are you guys going to kick me out?
Yeah.
And I always laugh because I just know what's going on with their minds because I've been there before. And so it happens quite frequently. And I just laugh to myself because I know so none of us are like that. But they do. They get really down on themselves and then they think that, something bad's going to happen. They're going to be in trouble. And so it's just kind of funny that we're talking about it because I do hear it more than you would imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. So that's why we're talking about this, because so many of us are so worried about pleasing authority figures or following things just right or rebelling against all of these rigid rules that we think are there. And our brains are like, yeah, just eat the cake for God's sake and stop worrying about it so much, And so all of this is just so prevalent in our brains. So I just want, if you are listening to this podcast and you notice that this has happened to you, I just want you to know you're not alone. This is really normal. And I think it's really important to just become aware, right? Just become aware.
Right.
You fix this by becoming aware. That's the first step. Just knowing what is happening is huge. And knowing why and how we're rebelling so that we can catch these patterns is super, super important. And just for your information, for our listeners, this is some of the work that we do in the membership, the Empowered Weight Loss membership. It's very powerful, powerful work. Okay. So that is the first way that our brains play tricks on us, is this hidden rebellion. Okay. Do you have any questions about any of that, Marshall?
No, nope.
No. Okay. Okay, great. So I'm going to move on to the next form of resistance. And that is resistance that comes from our primitive brain. So we've talked about this before a lot on the podcast. It shows up like you have this very well-meaning but totally misguided friend in our heads. And this, we have the best of intentions. We set out to eat nourishing food. We're going to exercise regularly, and we're going to make great choices for ourselves. And then suddenly there's this voice in our head saying, oh, you deserve that treat. Or you can start tomorrow. Like this well-meaning friend just pops in and says, oh, later, dude. Do it later. So we're getting permission to continue our old habits. It's almost as if our subconscious is trying to maintain the status quo. And so what's going on here? Well, our primitive brains naturally resist change. They want to keep us safe and they want to keep us stable. So remember, as far as your primitive brain is concerned, the status quo, meaning what's going on right now, means survival. We're safe and we're comfortable and we're alive. We might not be thriving necessarily, but we're safe and alive and comfortable. Stepping out of our comfort zone means that we're going to risk our safety as far as the primitive brain is concerned. So even though stepping out of our comfort zone is where our growth is going to happen and where we're going to be able to meet our goals, our primitive brain doesn't like change one bit because we risk our survival. So we're naturally going to resist change, and we're going to get urges to keep everything the same. Our brain is saying, hey, you know what? Let's postpone this. This is not a good idea right now, right?
Yeah, sometimes it's really, really hard to recognize that's happening too. Mm-hmm. It's really hard because I know for me, when, before I learned a lot of this stuff, I mean, it was just really hard to recognize. So brain's tricky.
It is. So I would just recommend that you watch for this. So recognize when your primitive brain is sabotaging you, trying to keep you safe and comfortable, staying in the same habits, not moving forward. That's the first step to overcoming this. Okay? Now, here is another mind game that occurs really frequently. It's called Imposter Syndrome. Have you ever heard of this, Marshall?
I hadn't heard about it until you and I talked about it a while back.
Yes. So I've heard of it, but I kind of had this vague idea of what it is. So I actually went and looked it up to get an exact definition. So imposter syndrome is a psychological occurrence in which people doubt their skills, their talents, or their accomplishments. And they have this persistent internalized fear of being exposed as frauds. So despite all the evidence of their competence, those experiencing this phenomenon do not believe they deserve their success or their luck. So people experiencing imposter syndrome tend to believe that their achievements are a result of luck or external factors rather than their own skills and abilities. And this can lead to feelings of inadequacy, anxiety, and a constant fear of being found out as not truly deserving of their achievements. So it's like a mind game where our successes get downplayed and our inner critic just magnifies all of our perceived failures. And this can be a real barrier in our weight loss journey because we might think, well, who am I to be successful in this? Or this is too easy and I haven't worked hard enough to deserve this. And we feel like frauds and we feel undeserving. And then we sabotage ourselves. So here are some signs of imposter syndrome. Number one, we attribute our success to external factors. We think our success is due to luck or timing or help from other people, and we don't acknowledge our own skills and efforts. I see this a lot when people tell me that it's because of me that they've been successful, or it's because of the help that they're getting in our clinic, or it's because of the help that they're getting online that they're so successful. They don't acknowledge all of their own work that they've done to get healthy. Another sign of imposter syndrome, we downplay our accomplishments. We think our successes are not significant achievements, or they were relatively easy tasks that anyone could have done. And that's so interesting because I had to fight this feeling about getting a medical degree, if you can believe it. I felt like anyone could have done it. Yeah, it takes 4 years of hard work and it's challenging, but it's not that big of a deal. I would tell myself I didn't do it right anyway because I crammed for all the tests and I don't remember anything I learned. So when we're in the throes of imposter syndrome, we have this tendency to not give ourselves credit for what we've done. The next thing that can happen in imposter syndrome is that we fear that we're going to fail. Even though we've been successful, we fear that we'll eventually fail and that all our shortcomings are going to be exposed. And this can feel really terrifying and provoke a lot of anxiety. And of course, these tapes are running in the background and we're not even aware of them. A lot of people who've lost weight suffer from this as they start to approach maintenance, and they worry that they just can't keep this up because they were frauds in the first place.
This one really rings true for me. I really struggle with that one.
Yeah. The fourth thing that can happen if we have imposter syndrome is we discount praise. So we have difficulty accepting compliments, and we have a tendency to think that they're insincere or unwarranted. So we see this an awful lot too.
Yep.
When we suffer from imposter syndrome, we compare ourselves to other people, and we often feel inadequate when we perceive that others are more skilled or accomplished. So how many times does that happen?
I mean, that happens a lot for me too.
All the time. Yeah.
I hate to say it, but it does.
Yeah. Yep. So even famous people suffer from imposter syndrome. So for example, Maya Angelou, the great poet, said, I've written 11 books, but each time I think, uh-oh, they're going to find out now. I've run a game on everybody and they're going to find me out.
Wow.
Okay. So that's imposter syndrome. And I think, each one of those signs of imposter syndrome, I have recognized in myself.
Me too.
A lot. Yeah. So if I don't believe that I deserve success, or if I'm questioning how I'm losing weight and I feel like I'm not working hard enough, or I feel like I'm working really hard, but I might not be able to keep this up because I'm really just a fraud. Well, these types of thoughts bring just enough doubt in our ability to do this that we're more likely to give in to the urges of our primitive brain. And I remember so clearly when I was doing all of that crazy dieting in my early 40s, I felt exactly like this. I was a fraud. I'm not really this healthy person that makes the right choices. I'm just a sugar addict who happens to be on a really strict plan right now. And soon the walls will all come crashing down on me. And when the diet was over, I was off and running with all kinds of sugary treats. That's how this happens.
Yeah. I deal with this a lot doing these podcasts with you because Like, even when I talk about, my carrot cake that I have stashed in, behind, like when I go through that stuff, I totally feel like I'm an imposter because I'm like here trying to, inspire other people. And and sometimes in my own life, like I am all messed up and you and I have talked about that before. And I told you, I'm like, I don't know if I could do these podcasts because, like I'm really screwed up right now. And I don't think I should be the one talking to people. And
exactly.
And you really talked me off the ledge. But this stuff, this really kind of hits home for me. I mean, this is a deep subject.
Imposter syndrome is huge. It really is huge. And I think it's way more common. They initially studied it. It was interesting because when I looked it up, they initially studied it in high achieving professional women. And they thought that was only high achieving professional women that struggled with imposter syndrome. And then they started to find out, oh no, it's practically everybody. So anybody who achieves anything, they feel like frauds. They're not, that's part of the way our brain works. So nothing's going wrong with this, right? It's just part of the way our brain works. It's part of this all or none thing that's so prevalent in our brain, and how it's not okay to have slip ups and struggles and failures. And that means that we're not going to be successful. So how do we fix this? Okay. I think that one of the first things to do is to just acknowledge it, like recognize that these feelings of self-doubt are common and many successful people experience them at some point, and they're actually normal, and understand that having these moments of doubt does not diminish your accomplishments at all. And then another thing that we can do, because our brains are so naturally focused on our failures, our primitive brains in particular are just really, really critical of ourselves. And we kind of have to retrain our brains. So another thing that we can do is acknowledge our achievements. And so in Empowered Weight Loss, when we start our Tuesday coaching calls, we have coaching calls every Tuesday night. I always ask people to let us know at least one win for the week. One win. That's all I ask, is one win. And I'm wanting us to train our brains to focus on our successes. And most of us just only see our perceived failures. And it's so interesting because I often get a lot of blank faces. like, I can't even think of a win. Like, we're just not used to that. At least not in our modern culture. And so we really need to shift this, right?
Well, like even on Sugar and Flour Busters, you know how many times, when you post on there, give us a win. And I'll sit there on that post and sit for like 10 minutes and I cannot think of anything. And then I just scroll past it. I'm like, nobody knows I just saw that because I can't, it is really hard sometimes to dig that positivity out of yourself. I've struggled so much with that. Yeah. So I can understand if other people are struggling with it, because I sure do.
Yep. So remember, like everything, overcoming imposter syndrome is a journey, and it takes time and it takes effort to change these thought patterns. So just be super patient with yourself as you're training your brain to think differently. Okay. So when you think about all of these mind games, I think the biggest key is just to develop self-awareness. Pay attention to those seemingly insignificant moments when you're about to make a choice that goes against your goals. Ask yourself why you're making that choice and whether it aligns with your long-term aspirations. So ask yourself these questions. Am I rebelling against some perceived authority? Is this my primitive brain just wanting to keep me safe in the cave and not make any changes? Am I worried that I might be a fraud? In other words, am I struggling with some aspect of the imposter syndrome? You can ask yourself these 3 different types of questions. And for our listeners, always remember, you are not alone in this journey. So we're all navigating these mental games together. We have so much help for you in the Empowered Weight Loss membership, and we'll be opening the doors again in September. So that's coming right up. We're going to kick it off with a powerful and free Belly Busters challenge. So be watching your email for the announcements for that. So we're doing everything we can think of to help you achieve the success that you want and deserve so that you can thrive in a healthy, vibrant body that you're proud of. I want you living long, happy, healthy, disease-free lives. This is actually one of the most important things that you can do for yourself and for those you love, is to get healthy and stay healthy. So always remember that. And remember that your thoughts about all of this may be the most important aspects of your journey, because everything starts with your thoughts. Does that make sense?
Oh my gosh, you are so right. I mean, our minds are a very powerful tool. And
exactly.
They can really help us or they can really hinder us, I think.
Yeah.
And I think the most important thing is recognizing, figuring out what it's doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Mastering the mind is a lifelong adventure. And again, remember, as you're learning how to master your mind in your weight loss journey, you can apply everything you're learning to all the other aspects of your life. So plan to join us in September in Empowered Weight Loss, and we will see you all next week. Take care, everyone. Have a great week. Enjoy the summer sun, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Hey, if you really want to lose weight and keep it off for good, your next step is to sign up for Dr. Angela's free weight loss course, where you're going to learn everything you need to get started on your weight loss journey the right way. Just head over to journeybeyondweightloss.com/free course to sign up. Also, it would be awesome if you could take a few moments and write a review on iTunes. Thanks, and we'll see you in Journey Beyond Weight Loss.